An appearance? Excellent. All right. So thank you for coming back to the second session around reviewing and updating employment skills learning resources. So we'll continue to keep unpacking what it means to ensure that learning resources are designed in a way that follow good international principles, so instructional design, graphic design principles. We'll have a little review of, the actual design process, that there is a stage way of going through designing or redesigning or up designing, I don't know if that's a word, uplifting a design or contextualizing a design. And then we'll have a little look at some tools. So some of you saw some of them yesterday, but we'll contextualize them for the employabilities. And there's lots of opportunities to discuss what's going on. But before we move into today's session, let's think about what you did with so those of you that got an opportunity, considering what we were discussing just before, those who've got an opportunity to look at an existing employment skill resource or employability skill resource, what was it like to actually try to improve that? So ideally, first of all, get your annotate tool out if you haven't already done so. So go right up that top, remember, right up above where you can see my little scribbled out one. I noted when I was a participant yesterday, Michael, you have to actually sometimes put the cursor right up the top to actually see it, get the annotate, and then it's a stamp or draw. So what was that? What was the experience like initially for you to find an existing employment skill resource and then kind of critique it or give it a once over in terms of improving it?
Actually, I will say, where am I?
You're there, Jim.
I am there.
Yep.
The conversation at the end of yesterday's session was very valuable, and it's given me a different thoughts on where I might find a suitable resource. I had quite a bit of problem with that resource finding something, but I'll have another look and get something happening. Yeah.
Fantastic. So it's interesting that finding the resources can be really tricky. And then it's not only just finding them, it's finding resources that you can adjust and make changes to. You can't just pull anything off the internet and say, yeah, I'll use that. And so that may mean that you take the essence of the resource that you find and build it yourself, which then builds into your making it for your particular learner group. And I think that, the searching bit online, learning to kind of search online does take a bit of practice. Get the right keywords that you're particularly looking for. And so, if there's anything in particular that you're looking for, Jen, Michael and I might be able to give you some of those keywords to put into the internet to find those.
That would be really helpful.
Yep. So,
but I can discuss that later.
Yep. So normally it's kind of
more a specific criteria. So with what we've got to do, and all the copyright and acknowledgement, all that stuff, I was a bit uncertain.
Yep. So, and remember, you've always got your librarians. So if some of you may work in the larger institutes that actually have libraries with real librarians in there, but they're also local libraries. Librarians are really, really useful people. I hope there's no librarians in the room, but they're very well organised and they're kind of very down the line and so on. Not all of them, but they are fantastic resources when it comes to educators. So really tap into them, even if it is your local library. If it's not them, they might be able to have somebody in their local library system that can help you. Okay, I can see here somebody's got the ooh here and the heart here. Do you want to share what that might be? Is it to do with not being able to access something, or is there a concern like Jen?
That was me. Yep. That sums me up pretty well.
Anybody else got any concerns that they'd like to address or aim to address? Anybody got a good story about what happened when they So, sorry, Paul, I just saw your microphone. Do you want to, is there an addressing thing or a story?
Oh, well, I mean, I was just kind of the emoticon with the concern. I was just kind of looking at it a bit laterally, and just I was choosing it because the experience was an eye opener for me. And it's basically following on from our session last Friday when I was talking about and we were talking about how you need to constantly test your assumptions when you're looking at designing, and this is definitely what I experienced with Skills for Work and Study. Previously you're kind of thinking more about the activity and how it works as a learning activity rather than the design principles,
Mm.
and how much of how crucial they are as well.
So it's
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
it's an interesting process. So it's often we do the cert. Some of you may have done the Cert 4 and training and assessment, and so you're technically you're competent in these spaces, but it's a lifelong process. It's like being an educator. I've taught for, I don't know, nearly on 30 years, and I still don't believe I'm quite polished enough. Yeah, I'm actually doing a course myself to actually look at my own kind of teaching practice and unpacking that and evaluating it. And I'm finding that enlightening. So I think maybe the message is these programs are really, really useful because they give you another dimension, and not just from Michael and I, from the whole group, which is what I really like.
absolutely.
Really good point you make, Paul, because if we look at the world of design that students navigate through apps, signage, if you look at the design principles there, they can look at the things that they can comprehend and have discussions about, what sorts of things are easy to understand out there and which ones do you struggle. It can really inform your own practice as to how to present things too. So that the kind of world of marketing gives us lots of opportunities to think about. And that's generally how e-learning has gone. It's just pretty much gone, what works in marketing? Let's reproduce that. So snippets, stories, icons, hierarchy of information, breezy, buzzy. It's really quite fascinating.
Well, it's all human psychology that we're dealing with as educators and then as designers. So you have two roles. You're an educator, so you've got the educational experience and understand some of those principles. And now we're saying you're a designer as well, which you were before, but we're giving you kind of some of the things that, as a principle or as a framework, what to focus in on.
The element that has been gifted to me, I don't say that very lightly, is awareness, just awareness of how these principles can enhance learning for your students.
So, Paul, do you think there's an implication there also for how you facilitate? And
oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because I look at previous experiences that I had in the dim dark past as a literacy teacher, where I kind of had to, if I was giving my students, say, I don't know, a 12-page document, I would have to go and physically point out where we were up to, because it wasn't really clear enough in the design. So all those elements about about icons and signposting and whatnot, they're very critical.
Yeah, so all right, so that it's great to know that those principles are being useful. And I think even if, because sometimes we get kind of set in a way, I kind of get set in a way, like just very quickly, I started teaching. When I started teaching people on a typewriter. So please, for those people that don't really realise that there was a world where typewriters are around. And so there were only key design principles we could use on a typewriter. Some of you may remember them, you know, so like underline and bold was actually going over the letter more than once and so on. And so, and centering and things like that. Whereas, you know, some of those principles like underline, those principles don't work in the digital world so well because they mean something different. So it's taken me a long time to go, right, I have to let go of underline. I have to let go of centering, even though I've been kind of had that in my teaching and design practices. Excellent. All right. So thank you. I'm glad that the process is working, and we will continue to do this, because what we'll do is also not only use them to critique resources ourselves within this group. The goal is also for you to work with others and build this capability in others. So when other people are developing resources, you can work with them, again, using these objective type terms to describe and support what good design looks like, and then build their capability as well, which is pretty cool. Let me just grab that. So Michael, do you want to go through the, do you want me to swap?
Oh, that's okay. I'm just going to say about Edmodo, and I haven't got to this yet. Edmodo's created some problems for me too, so I'll be smart. I'll set up an assignment, and some of you have submitted that way, others of you have posted it, and it's been a bit of a nightmare. So my intention was, it's been because it's private, so that folder there you can see I've got highlighted. When I get around to it, hopefully the next day or two, I'm going to put your submissions up there in PDF form because I put some comments in. So you've been able to see your own feedback from me in the assignment, and also if you put it up as a forum post, but can't see each other. So I think I'll put them in there, and then you can see how they go. But the activity this week will make it a bit simpler, make it into a forum activity. That's a bit simpler.
Yes, please go. Yeah, I was going to say, any questions about Edmodo?
Yeah, with Edmodo, actually, I stopped using it because also it stops, like it deletes all students' work after a certain time. So I was using it for quite a long time, and suddenly one day I wanted some evidence from there, and I checked and nothing was, like, my work is there, but students' work is not there. And then I approached Edmodo and talked to them, and they said that's the way it is. They can't keep the students' work for different reasons, and it was removed. So it was a shock for me, and that's where I stopped using Edmodo.
Yeah, thanks. That's really good feedback.
Thanks. That's good feedback.
So I mean, ours design, obviously it is a good submission type portal. And so if you were going to use it, or if we continue to use it, what we need to remember is to keep a copy ourselves. So it does kind of double up things. The other is it's about you guys to be able to communicate and share with each other, so that Michael and I aren't just the conduit. So being a teacher is also being a facilitator. So it's great for submitting work, but it's also great for sharing and looking and learning from each other and building those resources, that bank of resources across the group. Anything else about Edmodo? That's my digital 5 seconds. I'll keep moving on. Okay, so these are the things that we're going to look at. Just a little refresh around the phases, I should say, of instructional design, but I'll let you read some of the others. So remember what we're focusing in on, the employability skills. So for some of you who were with us yesterday, this is you should be my A students in this one from yesterday. Wink. For those of you, so this activity is around considering the actual phases of good instructional design. And so the first one is around planning the design. And some of you who've done this before, or who've been in a previous, the beginners course, which is what we took you through. So I'd love you to think about, well, what does it mean to plan a resource? What are some of the things that we do at the planning stage of a resource, whether it's making it or updating it? Then we get into that design stage. And this is before we even start mucking around with the actual file or resource itself. What's the actual design activities that we do to help us there? And then what's involved? What are some of the key principles we need to think about when we're developing? And not so much the instructional stuff, but the actual developing of it. What's some of the things we need to consider when we're playing with the tools? Beautiful. All right. So, yep, planning. Yep. So thinking what kind of content, what's the visuals, what are the learners, what are their needs, what are we actually going to be teaching them, what are the outcomes? Beautiful. So the student needs are really important. Yes, the required skills over here. Yes, so okay, so understand the platform, and then can you use it in different formats? I can see here. Anything else in the so we've got the resource. Yep, beautiful. Got my little pointer there. Let me get rid of that pointer, put it up there. The other thing we might think about in the planning stage is the actual learning activities. They don't sit in isolation. So normally what we would do is go, well, what are the learning outcomes? Who are the learners? What learning activities will we do so that they can build the skills and knowledge around to get those learning outcomes? And then what resources do we need? So beautiful. And so, yeah, active and passive kind of learning. So I'm talking about active learning. So what activities will they do? Not just kind of reading or viewing things. Hello, that didn't work. So we've got, understand the platform. Yep, so understanding some of these learning preferences and learning styles. So that comes back to learning theories. My favourite's always the adult learning principles. So making sure we've got that. How to make it easy, beautiful. What about the actual action of designing? What does that look like, the action of designing? What does it look like in the designing phase? What outputs might it look like? Yeah, Lottie's got their videos passive. Lottie, if you've seen H5P, you can have video, then it stops and it gives them activities to do. And then
I have had a play with Adobe Captivate, so I've seen how sort of all that fits in there. So that, so video just talking to camera is definitely passive, but yeah, if you can add those interactive elements, it's really good.
We also, for one of the conferences this year, that was the National VET Conference, they designed it so that all the presenters had to record their sessions in case they couldn't get to the conference. And it was good because they did that because there was a number of presenters who couldn't get there. So what I did was I actually, so it was a video recording, but what I did is I just stopped. I said, right, here's an activity. I want you to write some things down or take some time to think. So I stopped. So I still made it kind of active, even though it was in a video format. Okay, so we've got, so it could be some content writing in terms of the design stage there. So making decisions. So the other thing that we do is actually, we're not even playing with the tools at this stage yet. I'm trying to get them in there. The other thing we want to do is get the ideas out of our head, right? So you're getting some of these things, but getting them out of our head. So not just thinking about them, actually putting them somewhere outside of your head, because then it's in the kind of 2D mode that you'll be looking at. If it's a physical resource or even if it's a digital resource, you'll get to see it more than if it's just sitting in your head. And as I pulled it apart now, I can't find it all. Oh yeah, there they are. So some of the things I do to get ideas out of my head, when it's just for me, I do these. I need to see me, sorry, just come back up. I do things like that, scribble on pieces of paper. And when I was designing one of the resources for the last session, I actually come up with 3 different I actually started with one and went, oh, actually, no, I want to put that line in there. Oh, no, I want to do this. And then what happens when I get it out of my head? So often if it's just for me, I'll do the paper-based stuff. If it's when we're working with clients, I'll put it into a more digital format so I can share it with others. And then that's the other part of the design process, is letting other people see what your ideas are so they can give you input. Or if it's you're designing for someone else, then they can say, no, that's not what I was thinking at all. Or actually, could you move that little bit over there? And by doing that in that format is much quicker than spending time creating or adjusting the resource. So the design stage is getting it out of your head, get input from others, but do it in a really simple format in that process there. What's some of the things we need to think about in terms of the developing the resource? So again, the instructional designs things are a given. There's a couple of key things we really need to, Jen touched on them early on when she was looking for resources. So certainly we need to have good instructional design. And there at least one other thing we need to be careful of when we're looking at other people's resources, looking to use other people's resources. Yep, beautiful. Okay, so we need to know some of the basics around copyright. We don't need to know the whole Copyright Act or the copyright laws, but we need to be careful, know that we be careful, I like that got up there, like to be careful about how we use that. If we can use it, sometimes it's very clear, it's under a Creative Commons license, and it allows, that means it asserts what you can do with the content as long as you acknowledge or attribute it. And other times, if it has copyright, doesn't mean you can't use it. It's just you've got to be careful how you use that. So I won't go into too much detail there. Yep, good to think about the converting, and we'll talk a bit about that as well. And then there's one other, if anybody was there yesterday, there's one other thing, maybe it's just me that I'm pedantic about this. When you've created the file and you store that file, there's something you need to think about that file itself so that others know what that files about, and also for you, fantastic, for you to find it easily. And so, yeah, the naming of the file needs to be clear and consistent. And so you'll see some of that in some of the files we'll do. Excellent. Any questions or anything else around planning? So what do we want to teach them? Who are they? What resources we've got? What activities will we do, etc. Getting those ideas out of your head and sharing them with other people to get input, and then being kind of diligent around some of the things we need to manage when we're creating or using other people's resources. Beautiful. I'll leave it at that. That might have been a quick 5 seconds, but if there is any, I'll grab those. And again, let me know, Michael, if you want me to hand over the controls. I think we're getting close to it.
Thanks, Alison. So it was a good, nice, really good look at the whole design process, and it's quite a bit involved, isn't there? And often we don't have the time that we need, and I think anybody does really, to really understand what it is that we're doing. I think I've just mentioned I'm involved in a content project, and the first thing we have to do is take a unit sight unseen, look at the description of the performance criteria and elements, and try to weave a story out of that in a really summarized high-level plan and give it to someone to be approved. And so you've only got an hour to do that. And you do that and you get it back and you start writing, you think, oh, I should put that down there because that really goes with that. Oh God, I didn't even mention that. So it's really, really difficult. And yesterday people talked about trialing things to see how things might go as well. So how do you know resources you look, find, or even build yourself? How do you know that that resource is right for your outcomes and learner group? Oh, Hemingway. Now, I think that's a tool for testing grammar, spelling. It gives you some of those American high-level scores, isn't it? High score on passive and active sentences and things. So,
it does, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you use that? What sort of benchmark do you use that to run something through?
Yeah, so normally I aim for sort of grade about 7 to 8. Just sometimes it might be slightly lower than that if I'm working with a cold group with low sort of English literacy, or I work with people with learning disabilities, intellectual disability as well. So I might try and make it even lower than that. But yeah,
it's a good tool.
It is.
All right, this one is really interesting to me. Check cultural safety. Could you explain what that's all about? Whoever posted that.
I actually did
that's you again.
little. It's me again. Yeah, I did a little online module about this, and it was just sort of checking around using particular language that's not offensive to certain cultural groups, understanding how they interpret things and things like that. So apart from doing that module, I haven't sort of looked too deeply into how to actually put it into practice, but it certainly made me think from other people's point of view. You know, I had to think about, so I was doing a virtual reality course and thinking about the types of experiences we used. There was one that was using guns, and I went, I'm not going to use that just in case there's people that, you know, have trauma from that. So just sort of thinking along those sorts of lines as well, thinking about who your end user is, and making sure that it's not sort of offensive. Or they were talking about, in the module I did, they were talking about colonialism as well, so decolonializing content and things like that. So
that's really interesting. I wrote a unit about cybersecurity, and for years I've known the term blacklist and whitelist. So this tool will siphon email and take it out if it's in part of a blacklist, people that push spam. And then when I looked the term up, I couldn't find it anywhere, and then found a site that had been renamed safe and dangerous list. Oh yes, of course, that kind of black is bad, white is kind of a good thing. But but the other thing we do really simply is like to try and include representations of the people that are in our class, whether it be through images or names. I did a project a few years ago, was targeted at migrants coming in who had high-level medical skills, and they just needed to train up for customer service. And it was dentists. And, my God, I'm only from India and Afghanistan and Iraq, but do you think it was really hard to find images of dentists?
I've had that problem as well, and working with people with disabilities, trying to find pictures of people with disabilities doing like normal work things, because quite often you find them in an environment being cared for in the stock photos, and it was really hard to find any of those kind of
and often organizations, what they can do, it takes a bit of organization, is get a permission form, take photos of people of your cohort around your house, around your community, store them up, and then you know, use them for your own resources, PowerPoints and things. It's often difficult. And now language, thank you. Language and ACSF level, that's a tricky one, particularly when you've got different groups. How do you, how's that your little siphon? Who posted that?
That was me, and I think it just goes back to well, it is tricky on a pre-accredited level, because they might be at different levels. But you know, I mentioned in the chat, I mentioned about UDL, Universal Design and Learning, not the vodka and orange. But and I wouldn't be surprised if Lottie knows all about that. And I just like that. I just like that analogy of trying to organise, instead of cooking the one dinner, organising the smorgasbord, so that people can pick and choose from different type of things. And with Skills for Work and Study, we had the brief that it needed to be ACSF 1, but there were quite a few pre-level 1 activities placed in there, so that the lower level learners wouldn't be left behind.
Yeah, it's really tricky doing that, isn't it? And I had another point for you that I've totally forgotten. Sorry about that. Oh, that's it. Yeah, and like you kind of made me think of something that you said, that often, one of the things is that we're talking about providing resources, but I'm talking about employability. Students are going to be using resources at work, whether it be their pay sheet or whatever. So, or operating procedures, policies, procedures, reading a brief. So, how can we incorporate as part of their language you know, the process of searching for and evaluating resources as well as part of their kind of digital literacy is an important thing. Thanks, Paul. Now, test and evaluate. That's a ripper.
Yeah, so that was me again, sorry. Yeah, so I do like to try, you know, different things with my students to just see if something actually resonates with them. I don't get the sort of opportunity to do it before the course, but I would put something in just to see if it works, and if it works, I'll put more of it in, and things like that. But yeah, quite often I may think that something's going to work, and then I may find that students may have a difficulty with, you know, navigating something or just understanding something. So I was teaching a business concept to a group of young school leavers with disabilities, and just I realized I had to explain a few concepts that I didn't realize I'd have to explain. So now I know that I have to explain those and do an actual little activity on those before we actually do the main activity.
Yeah, there's a bit of test and evaluate and everything we do, isn't there? Only because of time and resourcing. Now, just last one, plain English.
It was me.
Beauty.
Especially with us at New Futures and also with skills for work study. We need to make their life easier. So, and it's so hard for you when you are talking about another language. And also, I think that's why it's so important to have someone in the group who is not a native speaker to contribute and tell the difficulties the students may face. So make it easier. And then it links to the other one that I mentioned before, which is consider their literacy and numeracy skills.
Yeah, yes, that's so true. I 25 years ago, the Soviet Union, oh no, Soviet Union was still going when this was happening. This is how long I've been in the sector, sorry. And they said anybody who was kind of over 60, 65, they could go, they could leave. They're no longer any use to society. So we had a whole stack come into Ballarat. We had two husband and wife that started to attend, and then he brought his friends in and then brought other friends. And before you know, we had a little 8-member Russian emigre community. And yeah, he did most of the interpreting for everybody else. And yeah, so it made it quite easy. And sometimes they have their own discussions, which I was never part of. But so yeah, you do have to be flexible. You have to kind of let your guard down a bit too, don't you, to enable that to happen, to make it work. It's really quite challenging to sort of, okay, I don't need to talk. I can just sit back and then find out what happens and take the lead from there. Good on you, everybody. That's fantastic. Thank you. Now we're going to have a look at a couple of things, but the first thing we look at is this is the design principles that you've come to know and love. Now we've kind of got these partly from some of the documents that Learn Local have given us, and we've dressed them up a little bit too from other things that people have told us. So we've used this, just tried to use this as a kind of a nice series of benchmarks for looking at instructional design. And obviously, as we get more kind of experience and have more, I guess, reflections on how we build and create things and things that work and don't work, we start to build on these and have our own personal things. I like to create organizations to give context and characters and then throw them into the deep end in situations. Other people like to do more like researching and finding out. So it's really, what is your kind of personal style? And you can learn more and broaden your repertoire, how to represent things in terms of text and images as you go from your experiences. And so we've kind of come up with an idea, and the brief for Learn Local for these sessions was, for this intermediate, was that you guys would come away with some capacity to be able to advise others in the sector as to how to apply instructional design and improve. So we're using this as an opportunity for us to play around with these and look at some resources, which you're going to do in a moment, and then apply this criteria against them. So you can see we've got a little table there, and a few of you did this beautifully in your assessments. You know, gave it an A or a B if you thought it didn't meet them, or an A if you thought it did, and then you gave a bit of feedback as to why. And that was really fascinating reading. in there. So we're going to use this again, and we've got a couple of resources I'm going to give you a really quick look at, and then we're going to break out and work together to see what we think we might improve. So the first one is this image. Now this is kind of an activity, and there is a bit of a guide on how to apply the activity, but I think it's probably ripe for a bit of a adaptation. But I quite like the images are maybe a bit corporate and highfalutin, but I'll leave it up to you to think about that. So that's that one. Get a bit of a sense of that one, and then the second one is Alison. Go ahead, the second one. There we go. Thanks. This is cartoon. I don't think there's any text. So our flying saucer in the back of the head. You can kind of get the context, I think, on his phone. Okay, so got those. We're going to give them back to you and return the link. What we're going to do is we're going to go into the breakout room and we're going to split you up into two. And here's the instructions. I'm going to give you maybe about 8 minutes or so on this and we'll give you a bit of a warning when to maybe swap over to there's the links. And when you get into your breakout room, I'll just set these up for you now. What we're going to do is ask you to apply those design principles and provide a bit of feedback to us as to how you might improve the design or the activity or improve the relevance to your particular cohort that you might have. So just setting up the breakout rooms now, and you'll get an invitation. Oh, before I do that, has anybody got any questions? Okay, so I'll give you about 8 minutes from now. The invitation should have landed with you. So all you need to do is just accept that, and you'll be in the room. Wow, that was fast. It snapped right in, didn't I? Hey, I'm not going to go into the rooms because yesterday when I went in, they all shut up. I don't blame them. I thought.
Very good.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, they took different approaches as normal, but yeah, I love how people get really focused and they're on task and they're trying to unpack. So yeah, they took different approaches, but they're okay. Let me just.
Hey, so if we try to get through this by 10:40, 10:45, we'd be able to do that in the breakout room, I think.
Yeah, so I'll just get them to talk briefly about using that. If you want to get that up. And there it is.
Here they come. What a good group, not waiting for the kicked out the last minute.
So welcome back. Some good conversations there, considering the two different resources in terms of how they might fit into an employability program. So they're existing resources. Now we're looking about, well, how can we adapt them or improve them for learners in use for different programs? And we ask you to consider those criteria when discussing them so that we've got that language that we can use when we're helping others. Anybody have any suggestions on how they might improve this first resource?
Our suggestion was that we change the position of 1, 2, 3, and 4, because when you go to read it, we read number 2 first before we read number 1. So that was something that we all agreed on, that Yeah.
So naturally our eyes that gravitate to the top left.
Yeah.
That's how we've been taught to read in Western education. So that's what we tend to do. So yes, I can see perhaps, yeah, they need to kind of rethink. Yeah. Oh, there you go. That's a bit clever. Rethink the flip there. Anything else that you might improve? So anybody else in Jen's group that has any suggestions what they might improve? So anything about the colour? Everybody's happy with those?
No, I'm not a fan.
Which bits?
I don't like the black on that muddy yellow. That might be just my personal colour likes and dislikes, but I don't know. It maybe it's a size font on that or something, but it just doesn't. It's hard to read.
Yeah.
So I'm not an expert on colours, but yeah, somebody once told me never to, I can't remember why, I just remembered what to do as opposed to why, but they said try not to use yellow in PowerPoints. And it's interesting because it's quite often in one of their themes or styles is yellow is one of those options. But Michael, I don't know if you've got any good oil on the
which is really interesting because when you work with vision impaired, black on yellow is easier for them to read than black on white.
Right. Okay. There we go. So so how do we make sure? Sorry, Jen. Just
the same for dementia. We have to have a yellow background.
Okay. Right. So that's why some of that.
I recommend if we're writing signs for those with dementia, is that you use a yellow background. Yeah.
And so I suppose if you think about some of the signs that we have in society, they're yellow with the black writing.
Yeah.
Quite often. So there must be something about that. I don't know. It's I suppose sometimes it is a preference thing, but it's not really our preference. It's what our learners' needs are. And what I was going to say was, as long as you know what your learners' requirements are, it may be that you have a couple of versions of these. So it's a bit different in a session like now, but you may forward the different version to another student who could look at theirs either before the session, so they've got time to digest it, or if they're lucky enough to look at both things, they know how to split the screen, they could look at what you're talking about and look at their copy as well. What about the other group? Any ways that you would improve this particular?
Yeah, we also talked about the ordering of the 1, 2, 3, 4, and also I've had students from Afghanistan who are taught to read from right to left, actually with something that I was showing them, setting it out left to right. One of the students had to remind another student that over in Australia, we read it from left to right, so that's how she had to read it. Something else that we talked about, because I remember talking to a director of a community centre who had problems with surveys, sending it out to cold community, is ranking 1 as most important and 10 as least important. They would do that the other way round. So 10 is most important and 1 is least important for them.
Yeah, so would I. Yeah. So the higher the number, that you'd assume that means a better thing. So yes. And sometimes I've seen that in surveys where they actually put the colour different, like kind of, it made it was red actually, that said, these are how our criteria read. So you don't just take it for granted that, low's on the left and high's on the right. And again, learner group, do we need to consider that either in our instructions when we give them to the learner, as to, which way is it naturally for us or conditioned for us and conditioned for other communities as well. Excellent. Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Thank you for that. Let's, annotate. There we are. What about this image? So this looks to me like workplace health and safety. So maybe people in Lottie's group, who else was in Lottie's group, want to comment on,
and Anna,
how might we improve this particular?
We didn't really get to the point of how it could be improved, But we were just talking about how it kind of seemed it's a particular genre for a particular cohort of people, and we for our particular cohorts, for Lottie's cohort, Anna's and mine, it wouldn't be appropriate. If you had a youth type of cohort who would be into these sorts of comics, it might be really, really good, really engaging.
So it certainly catches their eye, doesn't it? So again, it comes back to that, who are the learner group? So if we were going to adjust this, we might not necessarily have it in whatever kind of comic style they've got here. So certainly about the learners. Anything else? What about the writing?
Yeah, well, we would certainly add some more text to make it less confusing.
And again, sorry, Lou.
I was just going to say there's too much interpretation you have to do with this particular image. So as Paul said, use some text to explain what's actually going on.
And again, it kind of reads from my perspective, it still reads from left to right as a cartoon, as we would be conditioned for a cartoon strip to read from left to right. Again, so does that cater for all of them? What about the other group in terms of what did you discuss how you might improve it for your particular learner group?
We did say that we would add some more text as Paul suggested, because purpose of the activity is not so clear. Then we also thought that there is too much to look at and too much to find the things, like there is extra information which could have been done without.
Beautiful. And it's quite interesting because in a lot of restaurants, that's actually where they put all the heavy stuff is up there. So it's as much as about, like, is it telling you not to put it up there or just be careful, but it is up there, but you've got to be really careful. But Michael, I think you wanted to kind of pull out a bit of a discussion around the visual versus the text.
Oh, yeah, because I kind of took a bit of a contrarian view with that. Like, I often feel like this is an image that doesn't have any text, so it's a good opportunity for students to discuss and interpret together what's kind of happening and work it out themselves in a sense, and say, well, what's happened here? What do you think has happened here? It's just a really simple, open question for me and I take the point about the cohort, but I think the idea could be kind of adapted in the sense that you're using visuals to as a visual resource to lead how you facilitate the message of that particular message, I guess. Again, it's always a context. Oh, sorry. No, go on. I thought somebody else was going to speak.
I agree with Lottie. There's too many distractions. You've got the person reading the note. So what is it telling you? Do you read your note first, put it back, and then you're doing two things at the one time? So when our group was, one of the suggestions was perhaps make it simpler, and of course change the font or the writing is too difficult. Could you change it once you'd road tested it to see if it was too simple? Yes, you could. I just think because I agree with you. I mean, I don't know if that's a notebook or a phone. Like I've wondered what that was. Well, our group all thought it was a notebook because they're taking the order of the piece. Yeah. So that's what our group came to the conclusion.
Yeah. And by putting her hand up high, the angle could be become a shoulder injury too, as well.
There's lots of opportunity for discussion in there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, and I can understand now the flow-on effect, but the bordering on the top of the Baie Marie is quite distracting because then you realise that those trays are going to fall on, I reckon they're sources, but sort of if you weren't thinking about sources, they look a bit like candles.
I think what we're saying is
it's too much interpretation.
Well, that's right. And so what we're remembering, what we're doing is we're always taking these resources out of their original context. So as an educator, you would be kind of building up what it's all about, and so that, you know, you might have had some discussions, or, you know, you might even be in a commercial kitchen or in a kitchen in a similar kind of way. And so you know, we're taken out of context. I agree with you why we have so much detail about the source bottles and so on, but there's potential. The image is there, that it's got a really good message, and we can't use this anyway because it's not ours. It's not, I can't see Creative Commons, but we can go, okay, here's an idea that we might be able to simplify with some other Creative Commons images together. Excellent. All right, so well done. Great critiquing. We're really kind of seeing where the value of some of these things are. Now, existing resources. So Michael, I'm going to give you the screen.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to look at some of the tools.
Yep, cool. Okay, so we're going to have a quick Cook's tour of some possible approaches or tools you could use. I'm sure some of you will be very familiar with this, with a few of these. So the first one I'm looking at is Canva, and Canva is a really interesting Australian success story. The woman behind Canva and the guys behind Atlassian are probably regarded as the two great successful IT company stories in Australia over the last 10 years. And this privately owned company hasn't been floated, and she's worth a couple of million. But it's a really fabulous tool, and so you just kind of see why. So let me just swap over to my browser. So it's basically an online tool. My partner does a lot of kind of videography for her work, so she can create animated sort of viral videos with this tool as well. But if you look at the templates they provide you, there's a whole range of them: presentations, posters. You might not use Instagram posts unless you're chasing extra followers, resumes, all kinds of things. And within each design is a range of templates for that particular category. So I've got a couple here. None of mine are really that exciting. So I had to create a graphic for a IT concept called arrays, which I still don't understand. But I saw this picture somewhere and I thought, oh, I can't use their picture. I'll adapt it and just change it a little bit. So it's got kind of like a few different elements that act as objects like PowerPoint. So here you've got a kind of like a square, some text, another text, bit of a text box. You can see they're all kind of individual and what they call kind of elements. So you can see, if you look at some of the elements, these are all the different things that you can add. Now, if you have a free account, because I created this with a free account, you get a limited selection, but still plenty to be able to create really good resources. And you would just, you know, drag these things into where you kind of want them and resize them a little bit like PowerPoint and add text to them and all kinds of things, graphics. And you see they tell you if they're free or pro when you hover over them. There's some Creative Commons images there, so you're free to use those. Want to embed them in some kind of videos as well. I'm not quite sure how many people would want to embed the happy whistling ukulele into their resources, but there's always one or two people who might like that. And then there's a whole range of different kind of text effects. If you want to make some, you know, fun kind of graphics for your learners, and you can see the little crown on some of these, but a lot of these are free and add kind of quite a bit of interest and buzz. So it's a great tool. And if you, I've only sort of tended to create things where I've really struggled to create anything else. Like you never find a good blended learning. This is quite an old one. Blended learning kind of poster. So I created this just from the icons that they provided. So the background and the whole lot. And then when I'm finished with it, I can download it either as a PNG. So it's a image format that allows us to have a transparent background. So unlike a JPEG, which if you have transparent background, so there's nothing in it, it'll appear white when you put it into a PowerPoint or a Word document. PNG will just take the background color off the device. In PDF as well, so that's pretty handy, and even video if you want to create some fun videos. Now the thing about this, it's really easy to use at a basic level. So students can have their own account create their own posters, publish them. You could then share them online. Because one of the things I always thought about the internet when I was working with my students is that first, it's just a big publishing house, and students can have a lot of fun publishing their own sort of stuff. So that's Canva. The other one I wanted to show you was some of the stuff we got in PowerPoint. And PowerPoint has this kind of design idea thing on the side. I'm sure many of you have kind of seen it. And if you select it, you can bring that kind of design in if you like the look of it, and then start to create your elements over the top of it as well. It will also kind of suggest ideas for you here as well if you want to create something. So let's say we want to create something out of this. This is kind of it looks like fairy floss that's perhaps been radioactive. Got some radioactive element, but we can also create like very simple shapes, combine them into a graphic. So here in PowerPoint, let's create a shape real quick. There's a rectangle. I'll draw it up really fast. Not going to align it too much. Got a bit of a nice color. Got some nice, and it's picked up some of the colors in that background. So you don't have to do too much thinking about color coordination. You can just say, okay, well, you've done the hard work for me, thinking about the colors, and we talked about yellow and black before. Then we're looking good. Then I'll put another couple in. So select that shape. It's going to go for a rounded rectangle, and give me another color. I could accept that or not. It's got a bit of a background on it. I'm not going to worry too much. Save myself a bit of time. I'm going to quickly copy it, and then I'm going to paste it back in. There we've got two. So we're starting to create a bit of a poster. And then we might want to put some, say, icons in there just to create a bit of a hierarchy. And there's quite a few in here. So let's put a map of Africa in there, eh? And it'll drop it in. And you've also got the capacity to change the color of that too, if you want to make it stand out or differentiate in some way. That's a bit tough to see, isn't it? There we go. Probably getting into the realms of psychedelia here. And we can chuck another one into the other one. Can't beat an apple. Always good for morning tea. Drop it in, and then, if you want to then insert some form of text, then you could put your headings in. And before you know it, you've kind of created a bit of a quick resource. It looks a bit interesting. So you can make a cartoon if you wanted to. And all good. So we could just export that whole slide as an image. So we go to PowerPoint, we go to save it as. We've got a few different options for how we might save that. As a PowerPoint presentation, but there's millions of options. And one of those down here is JPEG and then a PNG file. So the image formats there. But if you want to do it as a PDF, you could. So you could create a really nice resource to print. And when you're working on something like this and you've got a really nice design, you can, and you're worried about wrecking it, if you select your entire, hang on, I've got something going on here. I can't do that. Let's have a look. I'm going to select the whole lot with a Control and A, so everything's selected. If I right click on the selection somewhere, it's always a bit tricky. I can group them together. So all those separate, they are grouped. All those separate things become one group, so we can move them around safely and then export the whole group as an image, so you can reuse it elsewhere and then ungroup it. So that's PowerPoint. I'm not sure if our design tool will, here we go, design ideas up here when you select design. And what it'll try and do, it hasn't got any ideas, but generally when you create slides, it'll put some design ideas there for you. So yeah, PowerPoint's a really good tool. I mean, you could use Word for that as well. One other one that I use quite a bit, and there's a few dollars in this, but it's quite cheap. It's about $50 for perpetuity. And this is Snagit. Now I use this because I'm really slow visually to record who's in the room so I can do the attendance to send off to Valve later. So it captures images, gives you a little box where you can capture the images. It looks a bit like this. It gives you a capture thingy where you can decide whether you want to capture video, you want to capture a long website or whatever. And then you can add things like stamps and things. Or arrows. It's really fantastic for creating explanation. You might have remembered from the Edmodo slide that's got 1, 2, and 3 on it, and they were stamps that were kind of added into there. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Alison now. Just a couple of tools to maybe talk a bit about using PDFs.
Fantastic. Sorry, I had my nose right in the screen watching this. So yeah, we're talking about trying to either repurpose, reuse resources. So I could see what Michael was doing with that PowerPoint, that resource we were looking at in the hospitality scene. You could quickly create 3 images or an image, as Michael's just done there, and repurpose that, but design it yourself, because you couldn't just use that resource yourself. So sometimes you get resources, and Lottie's just made me aware that in Canva you can now, I'm assuming it might be a premium model thing, but you can actually upload your PDFs and start editing them in Canva now. But sometimes what happens is you come across a PDF that you're allowed to adjust, and you don't know, you can't, because it's in the PDF format. If you look up free PDF to Word tools, you can actually get one called, what's it called? Small PDF. I'll put that link in the chat. There it is. So I'm just going to do a quick demo of that like Michael has. So I was all organised on the other side. Here we go. So that's the website I'm going to go to. So I'll just bring that in. And so it's normally, you know, PDF to Word that I look for. So that's one I concentrated on. I found an employability skill resource that I want to use. It looks like this in the PDF format. That's got the, it's from the, I think it's from the Education Department in Victoria. And it's got some good information here, but it's not really a good design to actually have all of this on the right-hand side. It should actually list down the left-hand side and so on. And maybe I want to change the font or change a few things. So I want to adjust that. So what I do is I take the actual file from, I've saved it onto my computer. I just take the file, grab it, the PDF, in the wrong spot. Yep. Here it is. So there's the PDF. And so you can see hopefully that I'm just bringing across a document, and I just drop it here. There it's doing its PDF thing. It's thinking about what it is. It's uploading. And then it says, do you want to convert it to Word, or if you want to do some extra fancy stuff. So I did that earlier, the one I made earlier. So I've now converted that into, well, the software's converted it. I just used the system there. It's now converted it into an editable Word document that I can now do my editing in. So I can go, right, I think that reading's actually better from the left to the right for most people. The yellow I might want to adjust, or it might be that I want to change some of the headings, some of the titles. So remember, you've got things like styles in Word. So I'm in Home, and then I've got the styles, and they've already got pre-programmed ways of presenting information that you might be able to use. You can create your own style. So there's a particular style that you like, that you use all of the time. You can then create that and save it. It will stay up here, and you can just use it quickly when you want to change things. So I think what we'd like to do is, we've just shown you Canva, we've shown you PowerPoint and the tricky things that PowerPoint can do. You know, you can adjust some things in Word. So there's those kind of 3 tools there. What we'd like you to do now is, again, have a little discussion in the breakout rooms. Let me just put my little thing in there so you've got that. When what we'd like to do, so the question is, how could these tools be used to improve an employability skill resource or employability skill resources for learners with diverse characteristics and learning needs, which is what we've been doing lots of talking about anyway. So Michael, when you're ready, or I can.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was chatting in the background.
We could probably use the same groups if we wanted to.
Yeah, we could. I might bust it up. What do you reckon? Here we go.
So about 5 or 6 minutes talking about how might you use some of those tools, and any other tools that you're pretty cool at using as well. Anna and Megs, you okay? Yeah. Megs, yeah, just when you're ready, there's a little invite there. You're muted. You okay? She's gone. Beautiful, Michael. So maybe it's, I've got it, it's what, if you got it, it's 10:02.
Yes, that
So
sounds
maybe,
good.
because we can have a quick discussion and then we just need to wrap it up. So like 4 or 5 minutes max, I reckon.
Yeah, get him out at 10:55.
Yeah, perfect.
I'll send him a message to say 5 minutes.
Excellent. All right, I'll go in.
I was having a chatter in the background about Google.
We're nearly there.
Welcome back.
Yeah, I've got my mute. So excellent conversations in there. Again, I love it when I hear it's all about, you know, what are the needs of the student. So that came into being, and what's some of the potential, and also some of that cross sharing, like not just what we've shown you, but what you guys are doing. So anybody want to share something that how they might use these tools for their learner group?
Yeah, I don't mind going. Yeah, I use Canva a lot, and I use it for creating worksheets at the moment. There's a lot of worksheet type templates there that you can have a play with and add pictures and change the fonts and things like that. So we were talking about, yeah, changing the fonts to, you know, more readable fonts like, you know, Arial or Calibri or something, because sometimes the templates have quite fancy fonts. So that's something we need to look at.
Yeah, and I think you can, I don't do it, I'm not sure if anybody does, you can actually create your PowerPoint in Canva. And so you drawing on all of the resources that they already have. It's like the one-stop shop, really.
Yeah, I have started to do that. You've got to be careful you don't move your cursor to the bottom, because then this bar comes up. Okay. So, but apart from that, I have actually started to use it directly from Canva as well. So
anybody else want to share their experience using any of these tools to improve?
I do use PowerPoint a lot, and most of my resources are in PowerPoint, but I was talking to the group about I was talking to the group about how I converted it into the GIF, PowerPoint into the GIF while teaching Excel. It was a excellent tool in doing, it really helped passing that concept to the students, because Excel is sort of difficult to, unless you demonstrate, it's difficult. And that was very useful tool there.
So making it into like a video, the GIF makes it into a series of, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Saving it as a GIF. So instead
Correct.
of going file save as a PDF or file save as JPEG, you're doing it as a GIF.
Yeah.
Remember, PowerPoint also allows you to record audio
Yes.
over slides as well. So, and then you can set it in play mode, and so they can hear your voice as they go through each of those as a follow-up resources. So PowerPoint, again, is a pretty powerful tool. And then Shruti, were you talking about the ebook, some sort of ebook
Yes,
tool?
yes, that's right. When we started implementing the Google Classroom, it was really difficult to get our students to get onto Google Classroom. It is still difficult, but what I realized is having the things in ebook really helped, because the flipping of the pages noise, and like it made it so realistic, and students started enjoying looking at that book. And I have lots of pictures and very little of text. So usually they do understand, okay, I'm clicking on to sign in button. So big sign in button is there on the in the book, and that the students said helped.
So can you put in the chat what you're using? And for that would be great. So look, let's wrap up because we're nearly on time. I think I've probably got 25 seconds for us to be on time. So what we'd like you to do is find either one of your own existing resources, employability skill resources, employment skill resources, or somebody else's that you are either going to recreate or make use of, or the theme of it, and using a graphic design tool. So we've named a few. Shruti's going to share with us the one that she's doing. Lottie's talked about the Canva, how you can do different stuff. So choose one of them. If you're more familiar with Word and you at this point in time don't have the time to be playing with new tools, then maybe playing with those styles, or in PowerPoint playing with some of those designs and so on. So how might you enhance that, all in line, as Michael said, with the good instructional design review checklist, and come and share with us in Canva. Okay.
Is it okay if I put it in the
Yes.
Edmodo? Because I just I used a couple of them, and both of them are free, but the one I liked and really is good, I just want to confirm, so I will do that in Edmodo, if
Absolutely
that's okay.
perfect. Yeah, absolutely, because that's what we want.
Lovely. It might, sorry, not Shruti, could you also put would you be also able to share a bit of your experience with Edmodo up there too? I reckon that'd be good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I will do that.
And everybody else, anything else that you think that you find really useful, that's the whole idea of Edmodo. Obviously, we show it live here together, and then that's a static place where we can gather all the ideas and resources and links together, and then we've got this one-stop shop for all of that. So at the moment, I'm just going to wrap it up and say thank you. I'll come back to questions if anybody can stay and have any. So we will see you next Thursday for the final session in this program. So thank you for your contributions today. I can hang around for a little while. I've got another meeting, but I did tell them I was going to be a little bit late. So I can hang around, but if Michael needs to go, might need to go too. But if anybody else needs to go, see you next time.
It's been a great session. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been terrific.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See everyone next week.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good week.
Good luck next week. Cheers.
See you later. Michael, I thought you were going to grab, it looked like you were going to grab down the, you can see that, it looked like, when you grab Betty, it looks like you're going to grab something, somebody's